Woo, the Golden Stallion, the Man of Tomorrow, Sabzu, the Rated R radio star, coming from kind of an odder location. So if my audio sounds a little bit different, there's a reason for that. But regardless, this does get recorded in video, actually, and it is time for your monthly Star Wars update for Sovryn Tech patrons only, and it's your March one. And of course, there is video, and you get to see me. I remember if I shared it last month or not, if I shared the video, but at some point maybe I'll share the video, but you're not going to see anything impressive behind me this time. It's where normally I'm in the BDSM studio and you get to see everything that's, all a bunch of wild stuff going on behind me sometimes. But anyway, like I mentioned, I am with my co-host, of course, Robin Freebeard here, ready to, we're going to dig deep because March has been a hell of a month for Star Wars, even though originally I didn't think it was going to be. Then it ended up being. But Robin, man, welcome on.
Woo! Yeah.
Right on.
Snuggle bum, oogie woogie.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh man, did you hear what did they say about season 4 for Rick and Morty there?
I had heard that they hadn't signed it, so they're kind of
that's what it was.
They're in contract negotiations or something. So it's in limbo. I mean, and it kind of sounds like Cartoon Network just doesn't know how to deal with success.
Yeah, well, you know what? Boy, that is a conversation I bet you and I could have because
probably,
we've been around, and there's a lot of truth to what you just said. Even like 20 years ago, they didn't know what to do with success. So anyway, but we're here to talk Star Wars, and there's a lot of Star Wars to get into. Of course, maybe the biggest thing, the two biggest things that happened this month. One is that The Last Jedi finally came out on home video, and I shouldn't say finally because shit, I mean, what has it been 2 months that it's even been out of theaters, let alone maybe a month?
Yeah, the turnaround on this stuff is getting really short.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost no point to it being in theaters, but I'm sure we'll get to that point eventually, or something along those lines. But then also, of course, the other major deal, and I think kind of the bigger deal, at least for the Star Wars sweaties out there, is we finally had the last 2 or 3, depending on how you want to count them, episodes ever of Star Wars Rebels. And these were pretty interesting. And I think we're going to start off talking about that, but we've got some other interesting news to get into, some conjecture, maybe a little conspiracy here and there, and some fun stuff. And I can't wait to talk about the Last Jedi novel as well, which I went in like as soon as I could, I just dug into, and that's a pretty interesting thing to get in. But let's talk Rebels, Robin.
Yeah.
Man, so okay, we've got the last 3 episodes, or whatever, the finale. We'll just call it that because they played it all at once. I mean, even though it chalked up to like 3 episodes. But go ahead, let's talk about that, and then I want to get into maybe just an overall series overview, short one, how we felt about Rebels overall. But let's talk about these. Let's talk about the season or the series finale here. What was your initial thought? Like after you're done watching it, what were you feeling?
Oh, you mean as soon as I was done, cleaning away my ugly tears and,
Yeah, right.
It was really satisfying. I mean, I don't think there was anything, there were some surprises in there, but overall, there wasn't anything too unexpected. In fact, so far as the way things ended up, I actually called it a couple of years ago. I was only partly wrong in saying that.
Which part did you call?
A couple of years ago, I said, I'd really like it if the end of the series, they didn't kill off Kanan and Ezra, and that somehow involved them chasing Thrawn off into the unknown regions. And so we lost Kanan, but I think to me, I mean, it's pretty obvious. That's where the two of them ended up at the end of the episode.
Yeah, right. So obviously, like we talked about in February's Star Wars update, Kanan is gone, is dead. That's all over. But yeah, Ezra, and that's interesting because I know a lot of people were predicting that Ezra would have to die as well because everybody's saying, well, Luke and Leia can be the only Jedi out there, or at least Luke, and But that ended up not being so, and Ezra's out and about in the unknown regions, and we know Thrawn's alive, which that, for me, real quick, like, that was just the one thing that I wanted to really get set in stone.
Right.
That, yes, Thrawn is still alive. He's still out there. Who knows what the hell he's doing, but he's out there. And that was really key for me because he's my favorite Star Wars character, of course, so I don't want him going anywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I felt the same way. Like, in fact, I should have included Thrawn in that when I said I hope that these particular characters survive, because I think they all have like the both of them have a lot of potential still in the Star Wars universe, and maybe we can talk about that.
Sure, absolutely. So you felt satisfied at the end of it. I think I have to say the same. Like that, I felt like, okay, this is. I don't even want to say good enough's not a strong enough term. Like, it wasn't. I don't want to say it was like great, but it put everything together, and it put a bow on it and everything, and it worked, and I was pleased. Maybe that's the best term to use. I was pleased with how this ended. I don't really have any qualms with it.
And it was good closure.
Right.
I mean, and even that they left things open for continuing the story for some of these characters. You felt like that there was you got a good feeling about where these characters left off at the end.
Yeah. I mean, I think so. I guess there's really two things to talk about with this finale. There is the epilogue, as it were, which ends up giving us a shot of moments directly, more or less directly after Return of the Jedi. And then there's everything that happened before that, so with everything that happened before the epilogue, which shows us Sabine in the future, and a couple other interesting tidbits. The rest of it, I mean, in fact, we were talking before we went live, and I agree with you. It was kind of just action. It was a big battle sequence. Obviously, a lot of money went into this. You get to see the wolves kicking some ass and whatever else. Even though I still think that those are relatively pointless creatures. I get Dave Filoni's obsession, but they're still not really like serving a purpose for me. But yeah, I don't know how much else to really say about it because I'm still, it's in my mind. And well, okay. Also, was it the Purgils, right? Are those the space whales?
Yeah, the space whales, the Purgils. Yeah.
So those things coming in, like, because everybody talks about that episode. What was that from season 2 where you originally saw them?
Right.
And everybody's like, oh, that's just an environmentalist episode. Who gives a shit? It's filler. Like, this is just kind of
right. Well, I was going to say it was the poster child for filler episodes.
Yeah, right. But then Filoni gives some kind of payoff with that, and it actually, I thought it was kind of cool. Like, I was like, all right. I'm like, I can do this. I can get behind that.
Yeah,
because I like it when nature kind of bests man here and there. I think of like Frank Herbert's The Green Brain or something like that. And so to have like an organic fleet, well, I don't want to sound like you're using Bong, but to have like an organic fleet of something, in this case, the Purgils, kind of take on the Empire, I thought was pretty cool. And it makes Thrawn losing. This is kind of the big deal for me on this part. It makes Thrawn losing believable. Because he doesn't know anything about the Purgils. Like, if it was just the rebels should never be able to beat him because, he's got them licked. He has them all figured out, mentally and whatever. All the Sun Tzu stuff, take your pick. But for the Purgils to be the thing that he doesn't anticipate and that comes in, I thought that was brilliant. It's like, it's one of the few ways you can imagine Thrawn actually losing. Even though he survives it, he still kind of lost the day. In a way.
I mean, we got another payoff in that it fulfilled the the prophecy of Bendu. Where he tells Thrawn just before Thrawn shoots him and he disappears. He says, "I see your defeat, surrounding you like many arms in a cold embrace."
Yeah, that's right. That prophecy, and right, you did get the payoff. I mean, kudos to Filoni for even taking like a filler episode and then making it one of the most important things you've ever experienced.
Right? Yeah, and he made it. I mean, like and if you could like they really upped the production value on those too, because you look at the ones that were in the original episode and they look kind of cartoony looking, but the ones in the finale here were really badass looking as they're ramming into the Star Destroyers and, blowing everything apart. They were cool looking.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of sad though, because I got like way more pay at the Purgles than I did with the Wolves of any kind. So, but it all still worked. Like
but I mean,
the action was great. Like go ahead.
They did fulfill, like when you were talking about, purpose, they kind of fulfilled the same sort of purpose. It's just that the Purgo were kind of like, more of like the big payoff, like the action scene with the wolves was kind of cool and everything. But here again, like it wasn't as impactful as the Purgo coming out of hyperspace and just tearing everything up.
Yeah. No, that's fair. So, okay. Yeah. I mean, so I felt, with the bulk of the finale, like, again, a lot of satisfaction, with everything that was going on, especially with the Purgles and the Throne was still alive. I mean, what other thoughts do you have on that part? Then we'll get into the epilogue.
Nothing really else. I mean, it was nice that they tried to get most of the classic characters from past episodes in there. Even though it was kind of
Lando though.
Yeah, well, I mean, he's not really. I don't consider Lando to be a Rebels character. He's a Star Wars character in Rebels. So, but I mean, all the characters that they created for the show kind of ended up showing up in this episode, which like. In the case of like Vizago, it's kind of weird that he's there because he was always, very mercenary. And so now he's here helping the rebels out. I kind of guess it was maybe he was stuck on the planet and he was helping out of necessity of just wanting to get out of there.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I get that. So yeah, anyway, keep going.
That was about it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, fair. Yeah, so satisfying. I mean, that's great because for something that, well, we can talk about this more when we get into the overview. But I think it is I didn't know how exactly they were going to end it. I mean, some pieces you could kind of guess, but what they would actually do for a finale was a big question. Talk to me that I didn't see coming at all was that you do get this epilogue where suddenly you find out Lothal gets freed, and Sabine stays there, like appears to be kind of the governess of Lothal of some kind. And you end up you fast forward a few years, well, I guess it'd be 4 years, to just past Return of the Jedi. And she's telling, how that the Empire is defeated and everything. They never bothered Lothal again. And then you end up with suddenly, I mean, I'm sure I think we were all expecting it after the previous week's episodes. But, then Ahsoka shows up and says, we got to go find our friend, and then there's also another quick shot that happens as you see, which we already knew Hera because of Forces of Destiny season 1. We already knew Hera was alive for Return of the Jedi.
Right. Well, we knew because of Rogue One before that too.
Yes. Right. Yeah. But she has a son named Jason, which is spelled much like the Legends Jason Solo.
Well, Filoni had said that was on purpose too. So I don't know what's going on there, but I mean, apparently the choice of that name was very intentional for that specific reason.
Yeah, Force-sensitive kid named Jason. I mean, and I want to talk about that part too, but but this is a very it really whetted your appetite for what the hell is supposed to come next. And we don't really know exactly what's supposed to come next, other than there's the rumors about the Star Wars Resistance show, which sounds like something between Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens, but otherwise we really don't know much about it.
Right.
So we don't know what's going to come next. But this epilogue, this was a nice touch. Inside of 2-3 minutes, you get a million questions and more satisfaction, of what happens with these characters throughout the entire time frame of the original trilogy, which I didn't even think was a question I wanted answered. But when they gave it, I felt it, and I'm like, okay, great. This is, this looks good. I mean, what did you think about the epilogue?
I really enjoyed it. I mean, here again, it was extremely satisfying emotionally. Interesting. There was some interesting business. So I think the reason Filoni did this was because he didn't get a chance to do it with Clone Wars. And I felt like on a meta level, he was, trying to make up for that.
Sure.
So that was kind of cool. I mean, because he did, wrap up, sort of stories for the clone troopers too, that were
right.
So and again, Filoni tries to insert Rex as that rebel we see in Return of the Jedi on the forest moon of Endor.
Yeah,
which is kind of cool. Yeah, which exactly. I don't know if that's canon yet, but I mean, he keeps on laying those hints.
Yeah, that's been off and on where they said, yeah, it is canon, then, or like they kind of hinted that it was canon, then they said it wasn't, then they said it is, and exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that was nice, to get that in there. I mean, how do you feel about, when Ahsoka shows up, everything gets serious every time that happens. It's amazing that character is such a nexus now, really, in Star Wars.
Right.
I mean, it feels like that they're setting up for what the next show is going to be, of Sabine and Ahsoka going into the unknown regions, potentially. And
it's kind of a big mystery as to what I'm really looking forward to what he does next, because is he gonna start out a show with those characters, or is he going to start a show about this resistance and then work those characters in like he did with Ahsoka and the clone troopers in Rebels?
Oh yeah, right. Where Rebels kind of becomes a like a capstone on top of Clone Wars.
Right.
And then this would be Resistance would be that. Right. Yeah, that's entirely possible. I'm very open to that.
Yeah.
Okay. So I mean, but when you saw, I mean, I'm sure you felt the same way I did. As soon as you saw Ahsoka, you're just like, oh yeah, here we go.
Right. Well, and the her having the ship that she did from the Clone Wars was a really nice touch too.
Yeah, and that staff was pretty cool, though we don't know anything about that staff.
And I noticed that when the ship came in, she was being escorted by 2 X-Wings. So I don't know if that implies that she was with the Rebel Alliance at that point, or if she's just being escorted by X-Wings that are on Lothal, or what. I just thought that was interesting. I didn't know what that implied.
Yeah, well, maybe that's pointing at Resistance. I don't know.
Yeah. But it's kind of big mystery. Like, we were talking about this in the last episode. Is like, where's Ahsoka been since she came back from the World Between Worlds?
Right. Good point. Okay, so yeah, I mean, so we got a lot of mysteries with it. I mean, it was satisfying to see it because at least then we know kind of the fate of these characters, which is largely what I feel like the entire finale left us with. Okay, here are the fates, which is great because Star Wars doesn't always give us that.
No,
so I'm totally fine with the fact that we got a ton of it, that we got almost what they call an orgy of evidence, right?
Right.
I mean, that worked for me all the way. So okay. Now, how about Jason Solo? Like, what was your reaction to this? How do you feel about this? And maybe even a theory where you think it's going to go?
I mean, that came at me out of left field. I was not expecting that at all. And I hate getting into like the mechanics of how that happened, but I mean, when did they have time?
Well, all right, two things. So the part that it doesn't work for me quick. Like, I agree, it came out of left field. Didn't expect it at all, but a nice surprise. Okay. Like, I love the idea that potentially Twi'lek people have like a much longer, shall we say, gestation period, perhaps, pregnancy than humans do. So like that kind of works, but it sort of makes the kiss like meaningless that happened just a few episodes previous.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, so they stooped and you're making this big deal out of a kiss? What the fuck?
Well, I mean, yeah, because right after that episode, she got captured, didn't she?
Yeah.
So here again, it's like, I mean, it's here again. It is partly a kid's show, so it's not something that really like deserves to be dwelled on too much. But I mean, another really kind of like dark point, if you want to get into it, is the fact that apparently she's getting tortured while she's pregnant.
Right. Yeah. The logistics around this whole thing, like, it's a cool idea, but when you try to figure out, wait a minute, when did this? How did this? Oh, yeah, it raises some pretty ugly possibilities.
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that, right? That she was getting tortured while pregnant. Like, that's a whole other level.
Yeah, I didn't think about it until much later.
Yeah, right. Okay. Well, yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah, like I said, it's really dark, so I don't even want to like dwell on it too much. It is because that's kind of messed up.
Yeah,
that whole scene, like we talked about last episode, it was already messed up, and that just adds another dimension of, fucked upness to it.
Yeah, no, I agree. All right, so let's skip then because this is a dark place.
Right.
Let's skip to what I mean. How what do you see as the possibilities for this? I mean, what do you think of the idea overall about Jason?
I like it. Now, admittedly, I didn't really follow Jason's story in Legends too far because I dropped out around the New Jedi Order period. So I didn't, I know that he eventually fell to the dark side and became Darth Caedius and all this kind of stuff. I know the facts, but I didn't actually go read the books. I didn't really get into it. So, part of me kind of hopes that they diverge from that, and that, that the name doesn't imply too much in that sense. Because we could use another Jedi hero. We're kind of getting short on them these days.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think, you got a lot of people, which, this is just to get clicks on YouTube videos, saying that maybe he's one of the Knights of Ren or something like that. But come on,
Yeah, no, I don't think so.
Yeah.
That sounds cheap.
Yep. Yeah, I'm not buying into it. I think it's a cool idea. I agree with you. As much as I want as many dark side characters as possible in Star Wars, and I really do, he can stick to being a hero. I think that's all right. If they go that direction. But of course, anyone's guess is as good as anybody else's. And the one thing it seems we can count on is that Filoni will, by hook or crook, we'll make sure we get some kind of payoff with it, which he's really proven with Rebels overall, as far as helping us, not just with Rebels itself, but also with Clone Wars as a series. So, any other thoughts on the epilogue or what was revealed there, or we can go into kind of a quick series overview?
I thought the mural at the very end, that was really cool.
Oh yeah, where it looked like the Mortis God mural. But
yeah,
all
exactly. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Is that they really played up the art on these last few episodes. It's really good stuff. That's all I can say. It's just really good art.
Yeah, I think season 4 overall, even when it first started, I felt like the beauty, the presentation has been really beautiful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Overall. Even when they're showing off Yavin 4, everything that they from the very beginning of season 4, they really upped. I can't imagine that they had that much of a bigger budget, but what they did with it and whoever they brought on was great.
Maybe they did, because I remember watching the early episodes of Rebels Recon, and they would often talk about how expensive certain things were, doing the cost simulation on Darth Vader's cloak and stuff like that. And in season 4, we didn't really hear much of that. I kind of almost wonder if Filoni's proven himself again to deliver a good product. We'll give him the money he needs to finish this correctly.
Yeah. So maybe they upped the budget, and if they did, it shows, and it looks good. It was a really good looking season overall.
I would think they would have to have a bigger budget to farm some of this stuff, like the 2D animation and the Mortis God. Yeah, to do that. So that makes sense.
Yeah. I could believe it. So yeah, that was that mural at the end. I agree. That was really stunning and just kind of a nice, I don't know, like a cast and crew shot that really great shows get to do when they know they're ending. You know what I mean? And it worked, but it was a lot more stylish. So
yeah.
All right. So you want to go into kind of a quick series overview?
Sure.
Yeah. So, well, I'll start it off. I think Rebels, I don't like it more than I like Clone Wars. Clone Wars just had so much scale to it and scope. As far as it was just. I think people get lost in the fact of how kiddie it was, how much kid show it was, especially in the first couple seasons. The chronology parts of it are kind of weird because, it's not chronological through much of it, and that makes it kind of strange. But I think people forget, and when you watch it again, like the grand scale at which that series was operating is just nuts. I mean, like it's bigger than probably any Star Trek show, which is about the only thing I could compare it to as far as like having a grand scale. And it's bigger than any of the movies as far as like the amount of worlds that they go to, the amount of aliens they'd introduce. I mean, like all these different things, all these different elements. It was such a huge show. And there were so many other really just cool, badass things that happened in it. And Rebels is definitely the opposite of that. This is a very localized show.
Right.
Like it's all Lothal, more or less.
Yeah, I was going to say that you mentioned that. I mean, the whole it definitely shows a demarcation when Lucasfilm got bought out by Disney, because the whole franchise kind of went in that direction inwards afterwards. Right. Because like a lot of the legend stories I remember we've talked about this before. About a lot of the legend stories had a more epic, grander scale, and you did get that sense from the Clone Wars. Yeah. Whereas Rebels, like you said, it is very much more of a local thing. In fact, it's much more of a family thing. I really to me, it's a show about a family.
Yeah,
and I do like that aspect of it, and because of that reason, I kind of feel that there's sort of an apple and oranges comparison.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, sure. I can understand that. Yeah. I mean, and maybe part of that comes from the fact that Disney did decide to do this, one canon idea, like that everything's canon. And so to keep everything from affecting everything, they went very insular. And I could believe that like that's a recommendation, and that Filoni would respect this canon idea because no one else will at Lucasfilm, and keep it insular like that. I could imagine it, but I do miss that scope that Clone Wars had overall. But that doesn't mean. But I think you're right. Apples and oranges. I mean, that doesn't mean. I think the show was very, very good. I don't know if I'm going to call it great yet, because I want to compare it to some more Star Wars animation as we get it, and I'm certain we're going to get it.
Them making it more local and more about a story about a family did give them the opportunity to pull off that ending the way they did, because you noticed that they were very careful to say that the uprising in Lothal was not an operation being done by the Rebel Alliance, because we get that opening crawl in A New Hope saying that what we now know as the Battle of Scarif was the first victory by the Rebel Alliance. Right. So by the Lothal people, having this uprising, if that had been, something that the Rebel Alliance had done, that would contradict the continuity. So in a way, making it more insular did free them up to do certain things.
Yeah, no, I can see that. So yeah, I guess I'm careful to call it great, but I do think it was very, very good. It's very well done. It proved Filoni. I'll always be thankful for it for giving us Thrawn, for bringing Thrawn into the new canon. And actually, even like the moments of getting Tarkin and getting the payoff with Vader versus Ahsoka. I mean, like a lot of there's so many, or even the Lando episode was great. Like I enjoyed the hell out of that. Yeah. So a lot of the moments that you get where it did impact, I think, the grander Star Wars universe were so well done. Yeah. That's what's most memorable for me with the show. But I do respect also like that family angle to it, and the localization of it. Like I can appreciate that too. But definitely what sticks out for me with the show after 4 seasons were the moments that affect everything, that had the grand scale. And those moments were perfect. I mean, like they were just so damned good. So that's my thoughts on it. Go ahead.
I'll go ahead and say that I do think the series was great, and I could base that largely just on one moment, which I think is one of the best moments in all of Star Wars media anywhere ever, which was the season 2 finale, Twilight of the Apprentice. Yeah. Which, I mean, the last 10 minutes of that episode is probably some of the strongest, most emotionally powerful, satisfying, gripping action that Star Wars has ever done.
Yeah, which, it's funny, like if you went like me, and I imagine you did, if you went to the theaters in, 2007 or 2008, when the Clone Wars movie came out in theaters, you would never expect that would lead to that. Like, there's just no way.
Yeah.
You could not. If you told me that, I would have said, "Shut the fuck up."
Yeah.
That's not possible.
And the other thing about Rebels is that you can really tell that this team had like refined their process
Yeah.
to an art, because they got over that growing pains that Clone Wars had in the first two seasons. I would say first 2 seasons where they had some growing pains. Rebels got over that, I'd say, within the first season.
Yep, agreed. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so you're saying great. I mean, like what would you say? Give me a couple of high notes. I mean, obviously, besides besides the season 2 finale, which I mean is just going to go down in history. But like a couple other high notes of the overall picture that you felt like gives it that greatness.
Well, I mean, like I did talk about this already, but I said that I really, I mean, the family aspect really resonated with me. These characters really resonated with me. And this is, a personal bias, but this show happened to me at a time in my life where things in my family were like falling apart.
Yeah, sure.
And so one of my favorite characters is actually Hera, and that was just because it was just a strong resonance of that that motherly aspect.
Yeah,
she has that they did so well in this show.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she became the cornerstone of the series, which I remember like in maybe parts of season 2, it seemed like, well, are they going to do something with Hera or what? Like, what's the deal? And boy, you find out, hell yeah, they will.
Yeah,
they made up for that fast.
She really was kind of the backbone of this entire group of people. I mean, I could have easily fallen apart had they left that character aside.
Yeah. All right. You got another high note?
Something we didn't mention in the finale, but like all the stuff with the Emperor. Every time the Emperor shows up, it's just really good. I mean, we should talk about that scene at the very end there, where he kind of has this false hologram of himself. Like, we kind of got an impression of that, early on in the series. They showed like a news footage of the Emperor, and he doesn't look like his decrepit, deformed self. He looks like the Senator Palpatine. And so to see like this very kind of benevolent patriarchal figure show up, try to schmooze Ezra into abandoning his quest. I thought that was really well done.
Yeah, I mean, that's another case where, again, what I really loved about the show, where when you brought in the aspects, the elements that have the broader scope, like the Emperor, which is the broadest scope that Star Wars can do, it really did great with it. And yeah, I agree. I mean, and they were as much as I love Sam Witwer. I mean, they were totally right on to bring in Ian McDiarmid.
Oh yeah,
and you felt it, and it was perfect. Yeah, I agree. That was a really well done scene. Albeit some of it is like odd to explain logically, but regardless, it worked. Like, it got the emotions, you got the feeling. Right.
Another really good thing about this series, and not that the Clone Wars didn't too, but especially in the final episodes, the music was so good.
Yes.
I mean, oh my goodness, they really nailed it.
Yeah, that's something I should have brought up too, because in fact, like Christian Harloff, which, whatever, he's a 50-50 kind of guy. Harloff, he was saying, he's like, why aren't they letting Kevin Kiner, like do scores for the movies and everything?
Right.
And I agree. Like, he did. Granted, David Arnold did the theme, but one of my favorite movies of all time is Wing Commander. I mean, I love the games even more so, but the movie itself, I really enjoyed. And he did the soundtrack for that, even though David Arnold composed the original theme, but still Kiner did all the putting together. So I know this guy can do epic, and this guy can do the big space stuff, and he can do live action. And absolutely, because some of especially some of the weirder moments, like when they were going to the original Lestat homeworld or something, some of the music that they used, very strange but unique. It still felt like Star Wars, but very unique cues that they were using. Kind of like the stuff that the only thing I could compare it to is when Jerry Goldsmith started adding shit into Star Trek, like with the motion picture and so on. So yeah, I agree. The music for Rebels was top notch. That
Yeah,
totally deserves mentioning.
yeah.
Okay, how about do you have a series negative? Do you have a one big negative?
Um, there was Filoni does have a tendency to do a lot of this sort of fan service stuff, and it doesn't always come off well.
Mm-hmm.
So, when the Dark Troopers from Dark Forces showed up, they were a big disappointment.
Yes,
And the
I agree.
same thing with they turned the World Devastators into basically a space tractor. That was
Yeah,
disappointing.
yeah, right from Dark Empire, and they just screwed
Yeah,
it up. Yeah,
yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, I got there was a point in the series where I got a little tired of every Rebels recon. They're like, oh, we took this right from the Ralph McQuarrie paintings. It's like, well, that's nice, but come on, guys. like,
yeah, yeah.
like that's not gonna after the 10th episode that you do that, it's not impressing me anymore.
Right.
And I mean, I get it, but yeah. Yeah, I
I
mean,
did
go ahead.
appreciate that aesthetic though. That was one place where I would say actually though the and this here again comes down to budget, but the overall art and animation of the show, Clone Wars, definitely way better. The character models in Clone Wars were way more
Yes.
detailed. The way they did the texture paintings on everything in the Clone Wars, where if you actually look close, you could see like brush strokes and stuff, and it all just looked
Yeah.
like beautifully painted. That was really cool. And of course, they had to bring it down because they had a much smaller budget with Rebels. So I can understand that. So I don't. Here again, there's one place where I say Clone Wars was way far better, but I'm not going to knock Rebels for it because I
Sure.
understand why.
Sure. No, that makes sense. Yeah. I mean, as far as like a negative for me with the series, I'm not the localization really isn't a negative for me. I'll tell you the one thing that still just pisses me off, and I mean, I'm glad Ezra kind of they ended off Ezra right, and I'm sure this is going to be a very compelling character, whatever they decide to do with him from now on. But I thought that they were really wishy washy with this character. First off, it was BS in originally that he creates this kind of cool lightsaber that has a
Yeah,
little gun on it, right? And
right.
I've talked about this before, but it's BS that the thing is only like a stun gun. It's like, dude, you're taking on the Empire and you're messing with pea shooters. Like what is? And it's all because they don't want to show kids killing people.
Right.
You
Well,
know
he
what I
also
mean?
had that silly slingshot thing too.
Yeah. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I
Yeah,
mean, that was just that was ridiculous, especially when
yeah,
you consider the age of Luke Skywalker and A New
right.
Hope.
But they
But
didn't stick with that too long. Here again, I consider that part of the growing pains period that she
yes,
had in the
yeah,
first season, and they did. They got over that pretty quick because I mean, they jump into like season. Well, no, it was actually season 3 that Ezra actually just starts outright like killing people.
yeah, and well, that gets into the other part that they did not spend enough time, in my opinion. Well, they dropped the ball with what they did with Maul was great, but they could have taken a lot longer
Yeah,
with the
yeah,
entire Maul story arc, and
right.
in so doing, they could have taken longer with exploring Ezra's dark side, which I would have really liked. It just and I went so when I say wishy washy, it seemed like it all went a little fast. Maybe when he's out in the unknown regions, he's going to explore the dark side some more. If that's what's going to happen, great, because then we have precedent for that. Yes, he has experience with the dark side.
Right.
And I guess I'll just add in one more. We got to get some kind of payoff with the Bendu at some point. I'm sure it's going to be in some prequel thing, but I need payoff with the Bendu because that character just meant nothing. It felt like, other than that prophecy, was pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't know if I'm too hopeful on that count.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
I like Filoni has a tendency to introduce these kind of things and then just kind of, well, I mean, he did bring the Mortis thing back, but I mean, you still really didn't get any sort of, resolution or payoff as to, what they were or where they came from. You just got more indications of their existence in the universe. So
Sure.
maybe we'll get some of that in the future. But as far as like payoff when it comes to the character, I don't think we're going to get much.
Yeah. All right. No, fair.
But as
So
far as you're saying about talking about the show being rushed, yeah, I agree. That would be another low point for me. And here again, I get the feeling that maybe that wasn't exactly in his hands, you know.
Right, right. He wanted
Maybe
to
they,
close off Clone Wars, but they weren't going to give him a
right.
ton
Well,
of
it may
time.
have been, they told him early on that, hey, you're only going to get 3 or 4 seasons.
Yeah,
And so he knew probably well in advance that he had, when he had to wrap this thing up. So he had probably, clear vision of the kinds of things he wanted to get in the show and accomplish. And it just came down to, budgeting his time and having to get all that in there.
sure, sure. Yeah, no, totally believable. So, all right, real quick, talking characters. What do you say? It sounded like it was Hera, but what would you say out of the main cast was your favorite character
Yeah,
for Rebels?
Hera, no doubt.
Yeah, yeah,
Absolutely. I mean, and to a certain degree, it's hard to pick because, I mean, they're all great characters. I mean, and I'm talking about the core cast,
right.
the Ghost crew.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, like Hera's the one that I kind of like. That kind of, I mean, and I could include Ahsoka in there too, but I still kind of consider Ahsoka a Clone Wars character, not really
Yeah.
a Rebels character. So I mean, I would put Hera and Ahsoka on equal footing, but if we're just talking Rebels characters, then yes, Hera.
Yeah, it's a tough call for me between Hera and Sabine. Sabine was kind of like an early favorite for me anyway.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah. So and like with the Mandalorian story arc that they did in season 3, like I thought they brought that character to the next level. Like that whole episode where she's getting trained by Kanan I actually thought that was really cool.
Yeah, that was actually, up until that point, that had been a disappointment in the show that they really hadn't done much with Sabine.
Right.
And I think you and I both were kind of going like, come on, this character has this rich character history and background. You got to do something with her.
Yeah, yeah, and to put it together with the Darksaber and everything, that was great. Like,
that was great. Yeah,
I thought that was awesome. So
yeah, I love that. I love that little animated story of the history of the Darksaber that they fit in that Fen Rao tells. That was so cool.
Yeah, like they just showed it in kind of in the shadows of like the ghost. That was cool. Yeah. So I think that like maybe Sabine would just edge out Hera for me, but I love Hera too. So that's a tough call. But anyway, so yeah, there we go. We got a very, very good and a great rating for for Star Wars Rebels.
Mm-hmm.
So let's move on to something that let's go to Forces of Destiny before we get into, and we don't have to spend much time on this because it doesn't take much time to watch it. But Forces of Destiny season 2 came out. And these are the animated shorts that are canon. And I think, was there 8 of them this time around? Yes, there's 8 of them this time around. So season 1, I think there are a few more than that. And these generally concentrate, and I think this is a good thing, they generally concentrate on female characters. Though admittedly, season 2 did bring in, we get a story with Anakin, and they brought back Matt Lanner. We get Mark Hamill as Luke Skywalker on Dagobah, which is wild. So, the boys got to play in this one. I wouldn't care if they didn't. I mean, I'm all for it, being the ladies on this thing.
Right.
So season 1, I liked overall. Like, I thought it was fine. I'll tell you the first thing that stuck out for me when watching the season 2 of Forces of Destiny, and again, each of these episodes are only a couple minutes long, but like they got rid of Maz Kanata's little fucking intro words.
I was going to say, I'm glad they did that.
Yeah, because that got tiresome.
It was, yeah. I mean, every time I'd like, okay, I know I need to skip ahead 15 seconds so I can just, get through this.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And then the thing is like you watch the rest episodes, like going, these are actually pretty good. I wish they were longer.
Right.
Maybe you could take some of that front-loaded time they do with the Maz stuff and actually make the episodes longer. Yeah. So.
Yeah, we kind of got that. Like season 2, better than season 1, I think overall. There's a lot more. There are not so many episodes where, I mean, they're still what these things end up doing is they just kind of fill in little moments in between the movies a lot, often enough. But sometimes there's shit that's happening outside of it. Like I was surprised. I thought the one with Ahsoka, Padme, and Anakin was fairly grown up. Like, I mean, you're really getting the hint, and like Ahsoka's kind of winking. First off, that adds in the, because the storyline is that Anakin and Padme are going to go off on some kind of mission, and of course they're married, they're in love. This is obviously before episode 3, and they, they make it very clear they're going to be getting it on.
Right.
or at least as clear as a few winks can get you. And
Right.
Ahsoka ends up having to go with him, and Ahsoka figures it out. Like, this is really
Yeah.
interesting that Ahsoka knows that those two are a thing.
We kind of got a hint about that at the when Ahsoka left Clone Wars, and they're talking about her leaving the Order, and Anakin says to her, "I've thought about it too," and she says, "I know," and you kind of get the implication that she knows why he would leave the Order.
Yeah. Good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, this is driving the point home, but again, I was just impressed that this is one of the few times where it felt like Star Wars is actually winking at the fact that people have sex.
Yeah.
In emotion form. I mean, in books like Lost Stars and others, it's explicit, but
Right.
But this was that was a really, really cool little episode.
Yeah, I think there were 4 episodes that I really liked. That was one of them. Although it did have one issue for me, and that it was kind of a little odd in the continuity, because Ahsoka kind of acts like she hasn't met Padme before, and yet she's wearing her season 3 outfit.
Okay, yeah,
and
sure.
We know she's met her before because there are scenes in the Clone Wars where she's wearing her season 1 and 2, youngling outfit, and she's already met Padme. So that was a little odd to me.
Yeah. What were the other? What other episodes did you really dig for Forces of Destiny?
So I really liked the obviously the Mark Hamill and Yoda episode.
That was good.
Although it was a little strange hearing older Mark Hamill playing younger Luke Skywalker.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah,
but
otherwise, sorry, go ahead.
No, I was going to say, I agree. It was cool, but you definitely got that sense. But I chalk it up to where I'm like, well, I'm glad I got Adam West to do Batman again 2 years ago.
Right.
Even if it's just a voiceover and he sounds old, I'm like, no, I'll take it. And it was the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just a nitpick. I mean, and really, it's not even a big deal.
No, because you can tell. But yeah.
Right.
Okay, so those two. What are the other two that really?
So what was the episode with Leia and Maz? Actually, I think this was my favorite one of all of them.
Right, where she gets the Bush uniform.
Right. Well, we not only do we get an explanation on it, but there was for the fans of the old comics, not just the Marvels, but the newspaper strips. There were really cool couple of nods in the background. So
okay, and those were
as Chewie and Leia are walking through the market, there's 2 characters you see. One you see, which is kind of an infamous character, but it's the Green Rabbit character from the Marvel Comics, Jackson.
Oh, okay.
If you remember, yeah, he was in the background, and across from him was another character that was from the Williamson and Goodwin newspaper strips. So you remember in Empire Strikes Back when Leia and Han are arguing because he's going to leave to take care of the bounty he's got on his head. And Leia says, "I thought you were going to stay." And he says something to the effect, "Well, the bounty hunter on Ord Mantell changed my mind."
Right.
Well, Williamson and Goodwin actually went back to that and filled in that story in their comic strip, and they created this bounty hunter named Score, and he shows up in the background of this episode, which is really cool.
Oh, that's a deep cut. Holy
shit. It's really cool to see. I mean, it kind of blew me away when I say it, because they haven't really done any kind of any Easter eggs like that I know of in the series at all.
Right. Yeah, that was you're right. That was one of the better ones in this. Okay, how about number 4? I'm going to guess it's the Porg one.
No, actually, the one with Jyn Erso. Just because I love Chatterfan. I love that species. Whenever they show up, it's so cool. I don't know why I dig them so much. Probably just because they're little bat people. But I mean, I just like that entire species.
Sure. I mean, I'll give them credit. And Forces of Destiny is really the only thing that's done this and can really do it, other than the book Rebel Rising or something. They're really holding on to the character of Jyn Erso. They want you to really give a shit about this woman, which is fine. I think that I don't have a problem with that. It's just amazing. Like in season 1, I think 2 or 3 of the episodes were of her.
Yep.
And they're all sadly, like, there's a very small period of time that they can even bother to explore with, and it always has to be kind of these funny little episodes, and they can't really be something as cool as perhaps what they do with Hera or with Leia or some of the other women in the Star Wars universe. I wish they would, but go ahead.
Well, I mean, they can't, because the character's dead and she's already made her impact universe. So I mean, if she did anything that was extraordinary that would have called attention to her in terms of the wider universe, that's kind of brings about problems.
I totally understand. But I mean, so I like the fact that these kinds of things exist. Overall, I'm very pleased that Forces of Destiny is a thing. Like, I mean, because I enjoyed the original Clone Wars cartoon that they did 2 series of, which aren't canon anymore. I wish they were, but they're not.
Andy Tarakovsky.
Yeah, exactly. Those were really slick. And this is kind of a play off of that idea where, because back in the day, they'd be on Cartoon Network. They'd last however many minutes or seconds. And this is sort of a play on that. And so I like this format. And Star Wars does impressively well as a short. I mean, I wish they were longer, but their existence is fine. The only one I didn't really like in this bunch, I think the one with Finn and Rose was just, I don't know, adding too much. Like suddenly the shuttle flight, that there's some kind of big problem in the middle.
I mean, it's unfortunate that, we're kind of feeling burnt out with those 2 characters because of the excess of the Canto Bight scene in The Last Jedi. So, I mean, and this takes place just before that. So we're getting an add-on to a scene that a lot of people, including myself, felt was either overly long or just completely unnecessary to begin with.
Yeah, even the people, and I'm one of those, and I think you're one of those, that love the Last Jedi. Like, Canto Bight seems to be almost universally hated.
Yeah,
I mean, like this was just a pointless. It killed. It took out 15 minutes of what could have been some other kind of awesomeness, from it. And maybe that's a great segue to start talking about The Last Jedi. If you're ready, let's do it.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, now, interestingly, the whole Canto Bight thing. Now, when it comes to the novelization, you get a lot more to this. But maybe I'll talk about that now. Okay,
sure.
Let's talk a bit about the novelization. I know you didn't get the chance to finish it yet. I did. I tore right into it, and I was. Let me say this before we start talking about, because now The Last Jedi is out in home video. We've all had the chance to watch it a million times. But I honestly, I think this is one of the best Star Wars books ever.
Wow.
And I think it's even better than the movie. Because things work better when you can say them in this, and when you can get in people's heads. It's almost like, I mean, the amount of time that they spend in people's heads in the novelization of The Last Jedi is reminiscent of like Dune, of Frank Herbert's Dune.
I was just thinking that too, because I was thinking of, like, a lot of people didn't like the both of the adaptions of Dune into, television and cinema, largely because, it's really hard to pull that off.
All the mental, everything that's the inner dialogue that's going on.
I mean, Lynch tried to do it, but a lot of people kind of felt it fell flat.
Right. Yeah, which, I mean, of course, I love David Lynch's Dune, but
we're on the same page.
Yeah. So, but in any case, you get a lot of the inner dialogue in the Last Jedi book, and it's one of the things that really brings it to the next level and actually helped me appreciate the movie even more when I, as I watched it after reading, or more particularly listening to the book. And part of that is because, one thing that you don't really get in the movie that the novel brings on is, particularly with the character of Rose and Finn, you get a lot more of Finn wondering, how's Rey doing? Where's Rey? You get that hinted at in Last Jedi, but what you don't get is Rose is really sick and tired of him talking about Rey. And she kind of, like, I mean, it's over and over again. And there's whole scenes added in where she's actually telling him, will you stop worrying about this girl? Will you stop, and because it's pretty clear, I think, that Disney is taking the Rey and Finn relationship, like, they're breaking that up. Like, that seemed to be an original idea. Rian Johnson tore that apart. And if anything, we're looking at maybe like Rey and Poe or something.
Right.
But that was interesting because you got a lot more of that, a lot more explanation of that. I don't know how involved Rian Johnson was with this novel, but it feels like a lot of the explanations that he had to give that he felt he had to give after The Last Jedi came out and everybody was giving him shit. A lot of that is in this book. Now, it should be mentioned, this book ends up getting published 3 to 4 months after the movie comes out, and there's a lot of reaction time. And I think that there's a point to that because the book is called specifically The Last Jedi, the Expanded Edition. In fact, that's the first time I've ever heard really a novel get garnered that kind of title, where it's the expanded edition, to let you know. And I think it's worth reading, for that, because, and maybe, I could totally believe that they added in a ton of stuff after fan reactions, and that's why they waited.
Yeah. I think that's totally. I mean, I was thinking along the same lines. I'm actually rather impressed with how much you enjoyed it, because I wasn't really expecting much from it.
Well, that's the thing,
especially because of that marketing aspect where they're trying to, sort of like, clean up afterwards, things that they felt that they couldn't do in the movie, or things that, I used the word fan service earlier, and I wasn't using it in a negative connotation, and I'm trying not to here, but I mean, it does very much seem like that what they're trying to do is like, hey, like, we realized a lot of people didn't like this movie, so we need to, as an olive branch, do some fan service in this novel.
Yeah, well, I mean, they definitely did that, because some of the critiques I have of the film that I originally had of the film, and people can listen to my review from December on the Sovryn Tech Prime episode, where I spent half the episode talking about it, they really resolved like most of those things.
Yeah.
Even Canto Bight came off a lot better in text form than it did, on the screen. Like, it didn't feel like it didn't feel as much out of flow in that case. It was still kind of boring to listen to, but yeah, you got a lot more with what was going on in the heads of Finn and Rose that I think maybe made it a little more palatable. But the first half of the book, I mean, you get you get his funeral, which it's not that big a deal that they make of it.
Yeah, I did get to that part. So, I mean,
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's the weird dream in the beginning that Luke has where he's dreaming of.
Right. I did think that was interesting.
Yeah. And they even used, it was interesting, his wife's name was the name of one of his lovers from the old expanded universe.
Right.
Which I thought was cool.
But the person they used was what was her name? Played by Koo Stark from A New Hope. She was a character. Right. Yeah. Well, I forget the character.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
She was in A New Hope, and she was actually, like, if you watch the deleted scene, she was like in a relationship with another character that they mentioned, and she was the one that actually originally, like, derisively, called him Wormy.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. These are from like New Hope deleted scenes. Yeah, I remember.
Right.
Those things were kind of interesting, but like the first half of the book, you don't really feel like you're getting that much more. It really is a very straight read compared to the film. But then suddenly, like, once you get to the second half of the book, there's whole new worlds in a very real sense going on.
Okay.
You get, and the beautiful part, the best two parts of this is that you finally get a lot more references to Leia, Princess of Alderaan, the book by Claudia Gray, which had to deal with Crate, which is where, the movie, the ending of the movie takes place.
Right.
You get that. You get reference to the Battle of Crate, the comic book that came out in January. You get direct references to both of those, what happens there, as well as what Admiral, Holdo, or Vice Admiral Holdo used to be like. You hear all that. You get all these canon.
Yeah, see, that was one of my biggest problems with the Last Jedi, the movie, is I mean, both interviews and in universe, and and the way that the character got treated, just in a meta sense, I had a huge problem. It felt like they set Laura Dern up for failure because they didn't even tell her about this character's background. In fact, there was an interview where, like, somebody asked her about the book, and she's like, "I've never heard of this before. I don't know what you're talking about."
Right.
Like,
exactly.
Why did did he come to her and set her aside and say, hey, this is your character? Because it didn't feel like there was any continuity between the character that she was and the character she began. And I understand there's, 30 odd years in between,
Sure.
but I mean, they do seem like two completely different people.
Yeah, I mean, so yeah, exactly. I agree, and the book does a better job of trying to meld a lot of that. And again, at the very least, it gives you that broader scope of okay, no, what happens in the comics, what happens in the books, what happens over here does actually matter to the movie itself, or at least to the novelization. The novelization kind of puts all these puzzle pieces together, and it's just such a shame because if they did that in the actual movie itself, not just the novelization, like I would have walked away feeling even better about the film initially, because that was a major annoyance, is that it's almost like Kathleen Kennedy doesn't fucking pay attention to the rest of the canon. And, I mean, and there's a whole conversation that could be had around that, but it was really, so that was nice. Like that felt really good to get that. And it fit so beautifully that it did almost feel like, no, actually maybe Pablo and the guys do have a plan. That we don't always see. The other thing, though, that I want to get, and then we'll get into the movie more. The other major thing is that you do get real history about Snoke, about who Snoke is and kind of where he comes from. And what they just,
I heard that, but I haven't gotten anything too concrete on that. So I'm really curious as to what they did with that.
Yeah, so basically you get more of this unknown region stuff that we've been talking about this whole show. Okay. And you find out that he was there. He was the right guy in the right place at the right time, because you find out that the Emperor was building a whole separate army out in the unknown regions, which you kind of knew about that from the Aftermath trilogy, like Gallius Rex and all these guys wanting to build stuff out there. Right. And you get direct references to those and to events that happen in Aftermath, which, again, it's nice to have all those canon connections again. And you find out that, well, the Empire did go out to the Imperial remnant did go out to the unknown regions, and they got their asses handed to them by something. And Snoke was there to save them from it. Like somehow he rescued them from this. So, I mean, there's still mystery, but at least you get fucking something of like, what did this guy do? How did he end up getting in charge? Why did people pay attention to him? And that was it. And that's kind of the basic gist, but it's a very interesting, I think it's like chapter 26 or something in the book where you can read about it. And it's only at the very beginning of it, but that made for a really, really nice touch to at least know something about Snoke. Just give us a little bit. And I don't know how they could have put that into the movie, sadly, but I wish they did, because that would have at least, I mean, the only thing the book didn't resolve for me is I felt like the Rey's parentage thing is still kind of cheap. But that's a whole other story.
We're gonna. Well, I actually, that's where I wanted to go next with you, because like you don't have to address that issue specifically, but the big question on my mind is with this book is, do you get more character development with the characters, especially Rey? Because I do feel that the movie, she was very underserved.
Yeah, I think you get a lot more Rey because you get more of what's in her head, and also what you get a lot more of is Luke and what's going on for him. In fact, there's the point where when he's running in the movie, all it does is, you see where they're in the huts on Octo, and Kylo and Rey are actually in the hut together with Force time. Right. And then Luke runs in and says, Rey, no, whatever.
And they're doing the little hand touchy thing.
Yeah, Luke's running in. What's going on in his head at that moment is, no, I was wrong. I need to train Rey. She needs a trainer. I need to go save the galaxy.
Oh, wow.
And that was really cool to get that mindset from him, and to like at least hear that, because, one of the big problems with The Last Jedi, if not the biggest problem, it's the problem that Mark Hamill had. Is that, wait a minute, my character is the hero. What the fuck, what is this crap that I'm just like running away from all the problems and everything? Right. In the novelization, oh no, Luke has his moment. He has his come to Jesus moment, and he says, wait a minute, I'm dead wrong. I have to go train Rey. I need to go save the galaxy. Here, let's go do this.
That's interesting, because you get a hint of that in that deleted scene that we'll talk about later. But I mean, it was one of those things where it was so small, it would have, I can't imagine why they cut it out, because they actually only cut out half of the scene and they left the part with Leia in it. But it's where Luke initially meets Rey and tells her, I'm not going to do this, and he just wants to be left alone. And he goes into the hut and he kind of sits down, and you know, you can tell he's like reflecting on his circumstances in the past, and he's thinking about Leia. And then they cut to Leia, and she's like, you know, she looks like she's you know, feeling the pain that Luke is going through.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
You know, and they did that. They only included the part with Leia in the movie, because I remember seeing this, and she's just sitting there looking, you know, troubled for some reason. But they didn't have the part before that with Luke, and I thought, like, that was such a mistake to cut that out of the movie.
Yeah. Now, most of the deleted scenes that we got from this release were in the book. Like even the scene where there's the interaction between Finn and the other stormtrooper, where the stormtrooper ends up congratulating him, and like a lot of that stuff was all in the book, and that was cool that they're there. So the deleted scenes more or less are canon, so they're worthwhile watching. Cool. The one other thing I want to add into this is that it ends better than the movie does, because it doesn't end with Broom Kid. The book ends back on Octo, and you have what are they, the caretakers, those little creatures?
Yeah.
They are picking up Luke's stuff, you know, that was just sitting, you know, on that rock that he was sitting on after he disappears.
Right, like the compass and the stuff.
Yes, they collect the compass, and it sounds like they grab his green lightsaber.
Okay.
So all those things are waiting, and the books, like when they're in the head of one of these caretakers, it explicitly says that she's thinking, well, the stuff will be here for when somebody gets here, when somebody comes back. So nice little, that's a much more satisfactory ending for me. Also, in the ending, you get a lot more of Leia talking to Chewie and about what the, you know, new rebellion and everything's going to do. Just the book ends eons better than the movie did, because the movie should not, in my opinion, should not have ended with Broom Kid. If anything, it should have just ended with the Falcon going into hyperspace. Yeah. But yeah, so the book I highly recommend, because like I said, I think it's better than the movie, and just as a book itself, it's right up there with Thrawn for me as far as novels go.
That is definitely high praise.
Yeah. So anyway, let's go ahead.
Talk about the movie?
Yeah, let's do it. Let's talk about the movie.
Yeah. Because I mean, like with the speaking of the deleted scenes, they had that alternate opening, which I thought was way better done. In fact, looking back, because I also went back and watched the whole movie again, and really, like, the movie as it stands has, like, I think the weakest opening scene of all of the Star Wars movies, where they're just down there evacuating Dakar, you know, and that was just, I mean. But the opening scene that they have, where they're over the planet and it pans down and it turns into the dome that's over Finn's medical pod, that was artfully, that was really well done. I just, on an aesthetic level, I thought that was so much better.
Yeah, and also, two quick things on that. So one is that I think that would have been a much better lead. Like, you could have watched, just like you could watch Rogue One and it bleeds literally into A New Hope. I think now if they use that opening, it would have made much more sense with, you know, the way The Force Awakens ends, because the last thing you're seeing is Luke and Rey, and then you would just open up to Finn saying Rey, you know, waking up.
Absolutely.
It would have been perfect. The other thing that was interesting too is that, like, the temporary ships that they use all the classic Rebel ships, and I'm like, why didn't they just use those in the fucking movie?
Well, I don't know if you noticed, but one of those ships that actually was in the film was a retrofitted blockade runner.
You know,
so I mean, like,
you see the Nebulon B in the blockade runner, you know.
Well,
which
I think it's like a Nebulon D or something, because like
yeah. So anyway, that I agree with you. I think that opening could have worked better.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. So anyway, continue.
Let's see, what else did they have? You know, the scene with Rose's sister.
With Paige.
Paige, that was okay. I mean, the bomber sequence isn't really my favorite space battle. In fact, it's probably my least favorite space battle of all the Star Wars movies. But that was kind of nice scene, because you got more of that sense of what they were trying to accomplish with that, which was kind of like, you know, a World War II era bombing run. Those were always kind of like my favorite scenes in those movies, is where the guys in the the belly gunner position, and he's shooting down planes. That was always kind of neat and exciting to me. So seeing that was really cool.
Sure. Yeah. Agreed. I really liked as far as the deleted scenes, I liked the one with Phasma, and Finn, because it was actually amazingly, that was laugh out loud funny when the other stormtroopers, because Finn's like, well, I bet you they'd believe me if I told you that she shut down the shields as soon as she had a gun to her head. And the stormtroopers just and the stormtroopers just kind of look at each other, and it's hilarious because and Phasma knows, it's like, oh yeah, they would believe that, wouldn't they? And then she kills them. But
that was way better. I remember they actually showed that clip on the Star Wars show, which is the first place that I saw it. And my first thought was like, what were they thinking, leaving this out of the movie?
Yeah, that was a perfect deleted scene. I mean, that was so good. And I'm trying to think of some of the others. There, of course, there's the other one that I thought that was really cool was the third lesson that Rey gets on Octo, where she runs to the aid of, or what she thinks she's running to the aid of the villagers or whatever.
Right, and I'd known about this because it was in the art book.
Right.
And I was I remember looking through the art book and thinking, well, that actually sounded like it would have been a really cool scene. And the way they pulled it off is really, I mean, it kind of, it had that moment of humor that I think, and levity that the movie needed.
Yeah. I mean, even as simple as Rey just waving the lightsaber like it's a party. I was like, okay. That was nice.
Yeah, it was hilarious. Yeah, I love that scene.
Yeah. I'm amazed. Again, a lot of this stuff, like that scene included, are part of the novelization. So these are canon. I mean, you can enjoy them and say, okay, this is part of the parlance that I can talk to other Star Wars fans.
And it was one of those things that I think ended up being like a last minute cut, because in the trailers they did show Rey running along the beach
with the lightsaber in hand.
Yeah.
Yep, exactly. Yeah. That was another really great scene. As far as the deleted scenes go, I didn't see anything in the deleted scenes really that I felt couldn't have been in the film. Or didn't exactly fit. I thought all of it could.
In my opinion, they could have taken out the Canto bite scene and put in all the deleted scenes. It would have been a better movie.
Agreed, because it's about the same amount of time. It's like 20 minutes worth of sequences. Yeah. And I don't think anybody, I mean, even if they didn't do that, I don't think anybody would have minded a 3-hour Star Wars movie. I don't know that anybody would have complained.
I did see an interview with Rian Johnson saying that he's not interested in doing things like director's cuts, so that's just not his style. But it'd be kind of nice to see somebody do like a fan edit and kind of finish those incomplete visual effects that they had in some of those scenes and put it all into the movie. I think that would be great. I'd love to download that.
Yeah. This is why I miss George Lucas, because he did, when he put deleted scenes on the DVDs, he finished them. He laid the money down and he finished those sequences. Anyway, that enough of that. Yeah, the deleted scenes were cool. Let's talk a little bit about the documentary, the major documentary, which was it the Director and the Jedi? Was that the major one?
Yeah.
About an hour and a half long, and this is covering, I mean, it is totally concentrating on Rian Johnson, which is a remarkable thing because, I mean, even, and Star Wars has plenty of wonderful and classic documentaries that have won awards, quite frankly. But none of them really ever concentrated very much on the director himself this whole time. I almost find it odd just how Kathleen Kennedy is so over the top about Rian Johnson. It's a little weird for me. But overall, I mean, it was, even though it felt like a real puff piece for Rian Johnson, I did enjoy the hell out of it. I really
did too.
liked it.
I mean, and this isn't to say that I didn't like The Last Jedi, even though I do have some problems with it. But funny enough, I kind of enjoyed the documentary more than I did the movie.
Yeah, sure.
There was actually some, fairly emotional moments, like when Luke or when Mark Hamill is coming into the stage where they're having the Yoda puppet with Frank Oz and that little reunion with Frank and Yoda there. That was really cool.
Yeah, he's just laying there. It's like, I'm done here. Don't mind me. Yeah.
And the other weird thing about this is there were shots in this documentary, shots from the movie, but that weren't in the movie. We got they were alternate cuts.
Yes, right.
The fight between Rey and Kylo and the Praetorian Guards, and
Right.
some of those cuts were way better than what was in the movie. And I'm like, oh my gosh, these scenes are just so well done. It was really kind of weird.
Yeah, yeah. No, I know. And I mean, this is something that, well, I mean, if you listen to Ben Mendelsohn, like there's a whole other cut of Rogue One, right? You know, there's
I
like
know.
four other cuts of Rogue
Yeah,
One.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes, yeah, I would love to see some of those at least slightly more finished or at least concentrated on shots.
Well, I would say of all the Disney movies that I would love to have the alternate or original cut of, Rogue One would be it. Uh,
Yeah, yeah.
and
But
for,
Last
and for
Jedi,
for
yeah,
a
Last.
number of sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. For a number of reasons, you're going to say.
Yeah, for a number of reasons. I mean, the most being, the I think Jyn Erso was a much stronger character, or at least we got hints of her being a much stronger character in the original cut of the movie.
Yeah, more of a badass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And why they decided to play that down, I don't know, but that was, like, to me, the biggest mistake of the movie.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with that. Like, it's my same issue as well. But yeah, Last Jedi, I wouldn't mind seeing those either. This is a feature that they could really take advantage of. That used to be a huge deal. I mean, I don't know how exactly you do it with digital distribution. I mean, because you have to create custom software for it. But when DVDs first became a thing, one of the selling features of it, and there'd be a button right on your remote for it, was to actually watch alternate cuts or alternate views. Like, you'd see it from a different angle of a scene that you're watching while you're watching the film. And this is really cool. I mean, this is like getting into the movie and like kind of controlling the viewing experience by the viewer. And I wish they would bring that back. And obviously that's totally possible with these films.
Oh, I know it's possible because it's been done before. It's really interesting.
Sure.
I don't know if you remember this, but many years ago, there was a DVD release of Men in Black, where they released a special feature where they did that. They had all these different alternate cuts, and they actually had a feature within the DVD that lets you create your own edit of the movie.
Yes. No, yes, I absolutely remember this. I had it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was right. You could actually you could literally like go into an interactive editing room of sorts that you could control with your remote.
And that blew me away at the time. And I'm like, why they haven't done it since? I don't know.
Fucking Netflix, man. Like, it's the streaming thing, but I'm so with you. That's what I'm saying. Like, to do it, they'd have to create custom software. But that used to be such an exciting thing with a lot of home video releases. Which, by the way, I will say quickly, I'm feeling, just real quick, I'm feeling a little weird about buying modern Star Wars Blu-rays. Like, I'll buy the sets for Rebels and Clone Wars and all that.
Right.
But like, because one day there's going to be that big $200 set that's just going to have all 9 movies.
Right.
And I'm just kind of waiting for that. So I haven't bought the Blu-rays in case as much as I am a fan of Blu-rays, I haven't bought this yet. If anyone's wondering. So.
Yeah, I've kind of gone really back and forth on this issue a lot of times because before Disney bought Lucasfilm out, they did do that Blu-ray set of the prequels and the original trilogy all together, and it was supposed to be intended to be a very completist collection.
Right.
The problem with that one was that they had continued to futz on my end. They continued to futz with the color correction so much that it was bothersome to me. So like I had always held off on rebuying, that is, Star Wars movies until they came out with that completest collection. And then when it came out, like I said, it was just from an artistic standpoint, they had messed with the color correction so much that I had a problem. I couldn't pull the trigger on it. So sure. I'm kind of like, these days, there's Harmy, and that's kind of where it's at for me on the original trilogy. And then I already own the prequels on DVD, so I'm not in a huge hurry to go get those on Blu-ray, and I'm kind of thinking with the same strategy right now is I'm going to wait till 9's done and see what kind of completest Skywalker saga collection they come out with, and
exactly
make my decision.
Yeah, same here.
Yeah,
same here. That's what I'm waiting on. So, but I'll buy everything else outside of it. But
right.
Yeah, that's what I'm holding on. So okay, so yeah, that documentary was again, my opinion was it almost seemed like too much marketing for this guy, for Rian Johnson, but it was really, really cool. There was a lot of interesting things to take away from it. The other documentaries that came with it were interesting. They kind of expanded on things. There's the one that's like, is it like 15 minutes or something, where Rian Johnson is explaining to you the purpose, why he made the decision that he did with Rey's parentage. And also like what Luke was really going through. He goes through this huge explanation.
Yeah.
And after I heard that explanation, I was like, oh, well, okay. I like this. I get your point. Like now I'm far more accepting of the fact that Rey's parents are nobody. Granted, yes, JJ could change that. But I don't know. I felt better after watching that. You know which one I'm talking about?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And this comes back to one of my biggest criticisms of the movie is that, like, even early on, I got some of the core concepts of what he was trying to accomplish with the movie, but I felt that it was so, and I don't want to say poorly executed, but executed in a very mediocre sort of manner that it bothered me. Like, I talked to you this shortly after the movie came about the comparisons between Luke's journey in this movie and Muad'Dib in Dune Messiah. That's very much analogous in my opinion. And
sure,
I understood what he was trying to accomplish with that. And so it was okay with me. Like a lot of people were upset with what they did with Luke's character, and I empathized with that, but I understood what they were trying to do, and I felt like they could have executed it better. Same thing. And really, even bigger than that, though, was like I had a huge issue with the Dark Side Cave with Rey. Because, and after watching that documentary, I understand what he was trying to accomplish, but what followed after that didn't really fulfill any of what he was trying to go for. So I understand that he was trying to establish Rey as something more than her parentage.
Right.
The problem is she didn't really get any character development following that really made that concrete.
Yeah.
And that's my problem with it.
Yeah. No, I agree. I don't even have anything to add to that because I agree completely. But when he explains everything, and like I said, he spends a good 10, however many minutes in this little documentary explaining exactly what the mindset was behind all these decisions. And I got it. I was like, oh, okay, great. Yeah. And it works. But yeah, the movie just doesn't extrapolate that. It doesn't.
No. Well, I mean, not only that, I mean, I got a bad impression from that scene the first time I saw it because, I mean, in a way, I felt like he was trying to tell us that, she's essentially this empty vessel for the audience to take a ride in the Star Wars universe in. And she kind of seemed like the compared her to some of the criticisms that people gave of the character, the main character from the Twilight series, and I don't remember her name, but a lot of people are saying that, this character was a blank slate for young women to kind of fill themselves into the story with.
Right.
And unfortunately, I didn't get that feeling from Force Awakens, and people were making those stupid Mary Sue arguments, which I disagreed with then, but then they did this whole Dark Side Cave thing. I thought, oh my God, they're playing right into these criticisms people had in the first movie that were total bullshit, and they're giving them ammo. And that really depressed me.
Yeah. No, I understand. Yeah, that's part of what gave that all a bad taste as well. Not just the fact that it felt like Force Awakens set up something very different for Rey than what we got.
Right.
But also that what we did end up getting just didn't feel exactly right in any context.
Yeah.
I agree with you. Until now, now I get it more, and I'm sure they might change it, or I'm not sure, but they might change it anyway again. But
I don't know. I mean, I get it, but at the same time, I'm still kind of dissatisfied with what they did with her character in this movie.
Yeah. Well, I mean, this movie, I think it's, and especially after watching it again, the book helps a lot, but after watching the movie itself, this movie has a character development problem overall.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Finn, I really felt like they could have done more with Finn too. And there was that deleted scene with him where BB-8 showing him the hologram of him and Rey. And he's like, it's kind of creepy that you recorded that, but thank you.
Yeah, that was hilarious. It was great.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And it was building upon Finn's character. And I'm like, oh man, I really, and like actually Finn was my favorite character from The Force Awakens. Mm-hmm. And I just felt like he was very underserved in this movie.
Yeah. And the deleted scenes did serve him though. And that's why it's a shame they're not in the film itself.
Yeah, exactly.
Because even him standing up to when the scene we talked about earlier, but when he stands up to Phasma, that was awesome.
Yeah.
What a great heroic moment for the character.
The deleted scene with Rose too, where she bites Hux's hand, that was great.
Yeah.
They should have put that in the movie.
Yeah.
That would have headed off a lot of criticisms people had about that character too, because I think people's negative reaction to her was because she was kind of like this nerdy character. And other nerds felt that was reflecting poorly on them.
Sure.
And so, but then if they had added that scene in there with her just being more aggressive and more of a badass and more strong-willed, then, then I think more people would have, felt good about that character being sort of like a positive reflection on a nerdy character in the Star Wars universe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, hey, maybe 20 years from now, Filoni will do a special edition of the sequel trilogy.
I just kind of hope that they carry forward with that character and do kind of just make her better.
Yeah. Well, again, I think the biting is also in the novelization. So this stuff is there. The problem is most people aren't going to know, because most people aren't going to read it, and that's a shame. But the building blocks are there if they want them, certainly.
Right.
So we've got other news we do want to get into, but I want to talk about. There's so much to say about The Last Jedi. So how many times can you count how many times you've rewatched it since it's been available on home video?
I only rewatched it once. So
okay, all right. Yeah. What is your did you have anything really different come up for you just from the film, not the deleted scenes or the documentary, but something from the film?
It gave me a chance to further reflect on a lot of the buzz that's been around the movie since it came out.
Yeah.
And I was able to further solidify some of my concepts about the movie and kind of, where its place in the future of Star Wars is going to be. I know a lot of people are saying right now this is probably going to be the most hated Star Wars movie ever, but I'm not so sure of that's going to, prove out to be true in the long term.
Yeah, right. Especially if Episode 9 is great.
Yeah, people
will let this movie slide.
Unfortunately, I'm not really optimistic about that.
Okay, well, that's a big. Do you want to extrapolate on that a little?
Well, you want to get into our next story?
We can. I'll just say quickly that I think I've watched it maybe 4 times since it came out again, and 2 of those were after really finishing the book, and those are 2 very different experiences watching those again. Yeah. But I actually find myself liking the movie and giving it a lot more of a pass than I did the couple times that I saw it in theaters. Huh. So, overall, it's been a better experience.
Okay.
Though some things, and I won't go into detail with what they are. Some things that I thought worked when I saw it back in theaters, I didn't feel so much work this time around.
Yeah.
But once again, Canto Bite, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, I kind of feel like maybe I felt I went in just a slightly opposite direction in that my initial reaction to the movie was fairly positive. And now I have more, I don't hate the movie. I still enjoy it. I think it's an entertaining movie. But I do have more concise and refined criticisms of it now. Yeah.
Agreed. And there's some things. Well, anyway, I could go on about that. I'm sure we're going to get our chance to re-review The Last Jedi because I'm sure there's going to be a slow month for Star Wars here at some point. and then maybe we could do a full revisiting after we've watched it 10 or 20 times again.
Sure.
But in any case, why don't we get into to our other news? Do we want to get into the Mark Hamill story?
Yeah, because that's what kind of ties into what we were talking about, Episode 9.
Sure. Yeah. So Mark Hamill came out, and we don't exactly know when he was told this by George Lucas. It could have been in the 1980s. It could have been 2 years ago. And as far as I know, we don't know when that was.
Actually, I
But
do.
oh, you do know when it was.
Oh
Sorry.
yeah, and if you want, I'll link you to the video. But he did a video with Rolling Stone,
Okay.
which he mentioned specifically that some of the things he mentions in this article that you have, and he said, I just talked to George about this last week, and this video was back from like December, so it was recent.
Okay. All right. So Mark Hamill claims George Lucas told him what he originally had in mind, sort of, for episode 9, or at least for the end of the Skywalker saga, the Skywalker family saga, as George Lucas would, eventually be, want to start calling all of this. So, and basically, the basic gist is that Luke Skywalker dies in episode 9, not in 8, but in 9, and that's after training Leia, to be kind of the big hero,
right?
In all of this,
right?
And that's kind of a major difference. Now that can bleed into another story about Colin Trevorrow, who was originally supposed to direct episode 9.
Right.
But that's the basic gist. What are your thoughts on that, though? Just at face value with what Mark Hamill said.
It doesn't surprise me at all, one, that, the conversation took place, probably fairly recently within the last year. Because, obviously, it's pretty clear from some of other Mark Hamill's interviews that he had trouble processing Luke's journey in this movie.
Sure.
And eventually, he came to terms with that and, liked Rian Johnson's direction. But, he did have some, initial very serious concerns about, where Luke ended up in this movie from where he left off at Return of the Jedi.
Right. Yeah. And I can see this. And again, this does kind of lead into the Colin Trevorrow story.
Right.
I don't know what George Lucas's idea was for the last, for 7, 8, and 9. I do imagine that they are dramatically different, not just in when Luke dies, but that they are dramatically different from anything Disney came up with, because Disney doesn't even have like a set storyline. They were just kind of letting directors make it up as they go along.
Right. Well, Hamill even said that. I found another article referencing an interview. He says that the way he feels that the sequel series is progressing is very much like a baton race, where they're just one guy's handing it off to the next.
Yeah.
And they're running with it and doing whatever they want.
Yeah, and that's a real problem for that. I would love to know what George had in mind. I would, just because I actually still very much respect George Lucas.
Right, absolutely. Say what you will about the number of times that he changed his mind throughout the development of the series, but he still did have sort of this overreaching vision about, what it was about and where it was going.
Yeah, and he's risky. Like, I think he's way more risky. Like, just look at the Mortis trilogy. Like, that was George's idea. And as much BS as there may have been, or lack of clarity of what anything's supposed to be, that was a risky ass thing to put on Disney or what, Cartoon Network originally, right? Clone Wars was on. That was a risky ass thing to put out there on what is billed as a kid show. And it's still like something that people are just constantly talking about, and people just love it. So I think George Lucas is way more risky than people give him credit for, and more than Rian Johnson, I think, by leaps and bounds.
Yeah.
So anyway, well, let's do we want to shift kind of into Colin Trevorrow, because I have kind of a point. I have a take on where these two kind of ideas collide.
Yeah. Well, the one thing I will mention that is
sure.
In the art book for The Last Jedi, they included some of the previs art from The Force Awakens that they didn't want to include because it was very spoilerish in terms of both The Last Jedi, or especially in concerns of The Last Jedi and what they were going to be doing in Octo. So, and some of that art was based apparently on Lucas's original treatments. And so I do think that Rian Johnson took more from Lucas's treatments than J.J. Abrams did.
I could believe that. I could believe that.
And that's one of the things I do appreciate. I mean, you talk about, I mean, I don't think it's really, you can argue it that Rian Johnson's movie, say what you would, it was a much bolder movie than The Force Awakens.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. But I could see that maybe he pulled some stuff from George, because George's movies would have been bold.
Right.
You know, people can say that the prequel trilogies are boring or things like this, but there are some really wild ideas getting laid out in that. I mean, there's a lot of stuff going on there. Yeah, I could see that. You know, real quick, I just want to mention this with the Last Jedi art book. Some of the original art designs for what the temples and everything would look like on Octo were fucking awesome.
I know.
And
yeah.
I hope they use that somewhere, because some of those designs, I mean, they were like huge designs.
Yeah.
I would love to see that get used. But
so, do you remember the game from back in the '90s, Riven?
Of course, yeah. Sequel to
Mist, yeah. Some of that stuff reminded me some of the stuff from Riven, and it's a very bold, strong design. I love it. I love the sort of Southeast Asian sort of dome, golden dome that they had in there.
But a lot of geometry. I mean, like a lot of really hard geometry that was
right.
Cool.
Yeah. And then they had that scene on the interior of the dome where Luke is kind of floating and meditating between these like spherical objects or something. It was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that stuff looked awesome in that book, and I was like, boy, I hope they use that. It sounded like
they were going in that direction, because we're going to get into it, but there was stuff that they were talking about that was originally slated for the end of Force Awakens, where Luke is, you know, floating in the sky, meditating with these boulders circling around him.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And they did show some of that in the art book.
Yeah. Yeah. So, all right. Well, let's shift over to this, to the deal with Colin Trevorrow here. This is coming from cosmicbooknews.com. But it's saying Colin Trevorrow's Star Wars was epic. And so the rumors is that he had some pretty wild ideas for episode 9. I mean, you want to take the lead on this, Robin? You can.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think this particular article is hyping it up a little too much. I mean, we have no idea how epic his concept was. There was something that I heard about that I don't think gets mentioned in the movie, that at one point when Colin Trevorrow met Daisy Ridley at a party, and she asked him about, you know, what's going on with her character, and he gave her the pitch, and like,
she cried.
Yeah.
I
thought, wow, okay, you know, that sounded like at least it could have had some real emotional impact, and I'm all for that. I mean, some of my, like we were talking about the Rebels, some of my favorite moments in Star Wars are the ones that have that, you know, really powerful emotional content.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So yeah, we don't know. I mean, like, this is kind of claiming that we have some idea that Luke Skywalker was kind of supposed to be in it.
Right.
I mean, I'll say this. I think, and I'm not the originator of this theory, but I do kind of wonder if Trevorrow walked away because he wanted Luke Skywalker in his movie. And then they told him, well, we can't give you Luke Skywalker because Ryan's going to kill him. Yeah. But we can give you Leia, and you can have a grand send off with Leia. And like that, that's kind of the idea that people are saying, is that, well, Force Awakens was the Han Solo movie. You know, Last Jedi would be the Mark Hamill, or, you know, would be the Luke Skywalker movie. And then Episode 9 would be the Leia movie. And then when he lost Leia, you know, he's probably just like, well, fuck it, I can't work with any of this.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not done. And I think he might have walked away. Like he might have said, I have nothing to work with, and I'm just going to leave.
I think that might have been part of it, but I'm going to kind of tie it into something we were talking about earlier, and the fact that I really think that Kathleen Kennedy probably played favorites with Rian Johnson, because we were talking about, you know, just how enamored she seems with him.
Yeah.
And she can't say enough good things about it. She didn't even hype up J.J. Abrams that much, even though you think she would, given that he was, you know, opening up this new trilogy.
Yeah, and he's J.J. Abrams.
And apparently, you know, if you give this quote, you know, anonymous inside source any, you know, credit, saying that, you know, one of the things that Colin Trevorrow really fought for was to keep Luke alive into Episode 9. And I could definitely say, you know, see a situation where just Kathleen Kennedy said, no, I like Ryan better. We're going to go with his idea.
Right.
And so, I mean, it might have just been a mutual thing. It's just like, we just can't agree on this.
Yeah. Yeah, I could picture that, and this is the problem with the production of this whole sequel trilogy. Like you said, the
Right.
baton race.
Right.
It's very. This is not how to make modern science fiction. Hell, this isn't how to make old science fiction.
No. Yeah.
I mean, and if you need proof of that, science fiction has been able to have broader arcs since honestly the 70s. I mean, with Blake
Right.
Seven and others, there's no reason you can't do it today. It's almost insulting that it's not being done that way,
Yeah.
especially with something as important as Star Wars. But yeah, I could see that. And I mean, because, you know, this is the thing is, like, I don't know about you. I love Jurassic World. I thought Trevorrow did
Yeah.
a fucking awesome job.
I agree
You
with
know?
you. Yeah. Yeah.
He can take a franchise and he can revitalize it, and he can make it. He can give you scope and scale. He can give you the whole thing. So it never made sense to me that they let him go.
I know. Yeah. Well, in hindsight, I mean, when they announced the news, it was shortly after he did that movie, The Book of Henry, which really flopped.
Yes.
And a lot of the speculation and like the Hollywood Reporter was this was the reason why he got fired from the job. And like in hindsight, I'm kind of glad. I actually hope that these rumors are true, because it's really upsetting that Lucasfilm would be that susceptible to the Hollywood rumor mill and fire him because he had one movie that didn't perform well. Because that's just a shit reason to fire a director.
Yeah. No, I agree. That, because I mean, everybody's had their. I mean, look at Ridley Scott. In my opinion, greatest director of all time. He's had his shit films.
Oh
you know?
Oh yeah.
So, but you got to let these guys do their thing. You got to let them be bold. You got to let them make it happen, and then they can make the greatest stuff ever made at the same time.
Yeah, and there is some kind of, you know, credence given to that with what he's been talking about with Jurassic World 2, basically, you know, kind of making what people are assuming to be digs at Lucasfilm, and that, you know, the new Jurassic Park films are built for the next generation fans and not at their expense. So, I mean, you could kind of see them, you know, comparing, you know, what he's working on to, you know, what he had just been, you know, kicked off of.
Yeah. You know, in fact, in Hollywood, this kind of thing happens a lot. And I could see that I could imagine where a company, a rival company to Disney, is saying, all right, Colin, you get to wage a one-man war against Disney now. And, you know, and honestly, go for it, Colin.
Yeah,
do it, baby.
I mean, compared to the kind of, you know, really underhanded marketing that Disney has done, this is really not that bad.
No, yeah, not at all. And boy, talk about underhanded marketing. Maybe when we talk more about the Solo movie in April or May, we could talk about some of that underhanded marketing that's been going on. It's really insulting shit. So okay, I want to skip. Let's talk about Thrawn Alliances maybe next month. We'll get into that there.
Sure.
And do you have anything else you want to talk about with Trevorrow?
No, I think I hit all my points.
Okay. Yeah. And my main point is just that I think he felt he didn't have anything left to work with, and they wouldn't give him Luke. So I could see him walking away.
You know what? The one thing that I'll end it off with is that there was another interview with Mark Hamill where he was talking about Trevorrow and how he was like on the same page with him, and that but he doesn't know what happened, and he doesn't want to know because there really is no upside to the story. And that's kind of my overall takeaway. It's really just kind of a sad, unfortunate situation.
Yeah, absolutely. So, all right, let's finish it off with the last two. You had a couple of really unique entries. In fact, one of them is going to be, I'm going to make this a monthly thing that we're going to bring up. But first off, you found a documentary that's getting produced called "Looking for Leia." Tell me all about this.
Yeah, I came across this by accident on Twitter, and I can't remember who I saw that retweeted it. But it is essentially a documentary about the history of women in Star Wars fandom. Mm-hmm. And that concept is cool enough on its own, but the things that they're really concentrating on this documentary are the participatory fandom aspects. So, you know, like writing fan fiction and cosplay, and really all of these things that, honestly, kind of female fans do better in the Star Wars universe. I mean, to be honest with you, like the way most men sort of concentrate in Star Wars tends to be in a more insular sort of manner, where we like sort of, go over all the little minutiae and details and stuff. And we're all really good about dissecting it like we do on the show here. But sort of like the really like important cultural aspects of Star Wars, I think women do it better.
Yeah, no, I agree. They can bring on the inspiration and the imagination more than I mean, I fall prey to this. Like, I am such a gearhead when it comes to this stuff, and certainly I know ladies that get that way too, but I agree with you in the abstract, certainly in the convention scene. I mean, look, women bring the party. I mean, as far as the stuff goes, and it's so cool. And I love the fact that there's a link in the show notes for this episode that'll give you like an 11-minute preview of this, and that's really cool. And I think it absolutely fucking needs to be highlighted, because actually I used to complain in the 90s when it was the Star Wars role-playing game that Wizards of the Coast was doing the first time they went to D20, and the advertisements for that, you saw like a line of fans going into this house where they were just waiting to get in to play this tabletop role-playing game. I think there might have been 2 women out of a total of 60 people lined up going into this house. And I was like, that's so fucking insulting. Like, I don't care, what demographics you think you're reaching out to. Guess what? I want to see women on the back of that thing, and I'm a guy.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm running a D6 Star Wars game right now with some friends. Half of them are women. Right on. It's a 6-person game and 3 women. In fact, the lead character, the captain of the starship, this smuggler ship, is a woman. So
there it is. So I mean, this light needs to get shined on, and I'm glad that this documentary is getting made. So I do recommend people check it out. And
and there's just one small thing about the thing that really kind of pulled at my heartstrings in this, is that they go all the way back to the 70s, the late 70s, with these Star Wars fanzines. And I have such a love affair with Star Wars fanzines, both the fiction and just the articles, and just the pre-internet era of fandom that Star Wars was. It was very unique, and it was very cool. It was very underground, and it was mostly women. Yeah.
Well, I mean, look, the influence of Leia, and I imagine that's why, the documentary has the name Looking for Leia. I mean, the influence for Leia, or of Leia as a character, like, I mean, this is, next to Sigourney Weaver, as Ripley. I mean, this is one of your OG, or, maybe Sarah Connor, this is one of your OG, like, badass women, or women that at least, got some limelight at the very least. Not that women have to be badass. If they don't want to be, they don't have to be.
Well, that's the cool thing about Leia. And then one girl points this out in the clip, is she said, like, a lot of these female characters that are important in fandom, they tend to fall into one of 2 categories. Either they're, the princess sort of character, or they're the badass Ripley character. And Leia does both of them. Right. And there's still not too many examples of that. And she was one of the first. And so that's just, she's such an important, groundbreaking character.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I could see where, even though it's just the one character, and that has been a flaw that fortunately Disney, at least this is one of the good things they've done, is they've, dramatically increased the amount of women in Star Wars, in the saga. And, but, even though it was just one, the character of Leia was that great that, yes, it would inspire an entire fan base of women, into the fold. I think that's awesome. So, all right. The next thing is what I'm going to make sure is kind of a monthly segment of sorts, and that is fan work of the month, for Star Wars. And this would be stuff that, Star Wars fans have put together. Obviously, it wouldn't necessarily be canon. Maybe they try to fit it into the canon, or hell, maybe they try to make a new canon, which I personally, why not? Star Wars Infinities. I remember when Dark Horse did that. I thought that was so cool, back in the 90s and the early aughts. But this is, take the lead on this, Robin, because this is really, 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 really cool. I love this.
Yeah, here again. This is another thing I just stumbled across accidentally. Actually, I started following Luke Ross on Twitter. He's the artist behind the Thrawn comic book,
Mhm.
and he retweeted one of this woman's comics, and she's actually doing this whole long series called Abundance of Faith, and her name is Marietta Ivanova, and she is just extremely, extremely talented, not just as an artist but as a writer too. And it is kind of like a sort of alternate universe sort of story. You kind of
Sure.
it's like it's a what if sort of scenario. I won't go too deep into it because people should definitely go and check this out in the links. But
Yeah, the artwork is tremendous. I mean, like
yeah,
it'll just
yeah,
blow you away, and
like
it's all monochrome, and I totally dig that.
yeah. Well, there is a scene later on in the latest strip where they add a little. She adds a little bit of color, and it's really well done.
Well,
Um,
that's got to make it pop. Yeah, I can
yeah,
dig that.
yeah. So, but I mean, this woman is so talented. I don't know how Marvel isn't like knocking her door down with a battering ram and saying, "Come work for us," because she
Yeah.
is that good.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean,
And
what I've looked. Go ahead.
and other Marvel, obviously other Marvel artists like Luke Ross, who's probably my favorite, artist on any Star Wars series right now. He thinks the same thing.
Right. Well, hopefully that gets the foot in the door. I mean, yeah,
Yeah,
because Luke, I mean, certainly, that Thrawn comic is just killing it right now.
right.
And yeah, I love this work. I mean, just stunning. So her name, Marietta Ivanova.
Yeah,
I think anyway. Link is in the show notes for everybody to check this out. I think it's really, really well done,
yeah.
and I look forward to actually presenting more of these kinds of things because I have a laundry list already of honestly of fan works that have been done for Star Wars. That some of it's better than any official Star Wars production, regardless of who's owning it,
Right.
has ever done. And I think it's really cool to kind of show this off. Do you have any other thoughts on what Ivanova did here?
You know what? I'll just give everybody a little tease to
Yeah,
maybe pique their interest. But
whet
I
the
mean,
appetite.
yeah. It's the story is kind of like I said. It's a what if, and it's focused on Darth Vader for the most part, although he is not in it very much. But the whole sort of sequence of events starts with him, and it kind of leads into a bit of an Imperial civil war, and
Oh
it's
yeah.
really cool.
All right. So everybody can go read this
Yeah, it's
because
good stuff.
I love the sound of that. Yeah, I mean, and you can very quickly when you go to the site, you can see some of the artwork of Vader alone, and it's just fucking stunning.
Yeah, and
Um,
it's got Admiral Piet in it. It's got General Veers in it, and it's got a lot of like the cool characters from the Empire Strikes Back. So I
right.
mean,
Yeah, no, it's beautiful.
yeah,
So,
it is.
all right. Well, I think let's see, we've been probably rocking about an hour and a half, so I think we'll wrap this one up. But
Okay,
there's your fan work of the month. I think that's definitely a great thing to end off with, and it's a great takeaway. That's what I love in podcasting is when you have something that you can actually take away from the podcast and experience after the fact. And so, really, this is the work from Marietta Ivanova. Yeah, check it out. So anyway, I'm sure we're going to have a ton to talk about in April. We might even revisit The Last Jedi a little bit more then. We'll see. Of course, we're
sure.
building up for Han Solo to come out May 25th, which
Right.
means that the May episode, we'll definitely do the May episode like on May 30th or something,
Right.
after
Yeah.
Solo.
I'm sure we're probably going to get hit with a lot of marketing next month for the movie. So I'm sure.
Yeah, we'll be digging into that, no doubt about it. And go ahead.
One other thing I did want to mention, a piece of news that we didn't get to, but we could talk about it next month, was the new announcement for the TV series.
Oh yeah, okay. Well, we're gonna have to. Yeah, we'll dig into that. Which they've. Yeah, I mean, we're gonna get a TV series with the streaming service coming 2019. It's happening.
Right.
And yeah, we'll talk about that more probably in April. And I'm
Right.
sure we're gonna get. Well, I'm not sure, but we might get more details that we can discuss.
Yeah, I certainly hope so.
Yeah, I mean, and it'd
Yeah.
be the time to do it because with Solo coming out, deluge people with Star Wars news. So like
Right.
that's what Disney should be doing.
Right.
So we'll get into that, and of course, any other news. There's some other interesting stuff we didn't get to this month, but that we'll put off for next month, and we'll probably talk a lot more comic books in April as well. So if you're wanting to get reviews of all those, we will do that then.
Yeah.
So anyway, Robin, man, this is some of the most fun I get to have every month.
I know, me too.
I get to talk Star Wars with my brother. So how can you go wrong? So thanks as always, man. It's always a pleasure.
No, thank you.
And if people do want to find you, your Twitter handle is in the show notes. If people want to connect with you on this stuff, which some people have, they've been tweeting at us about Star Wars stuff, which we're always happy to talk about that. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that'll be it for this week, everybody. I will see all of you, or we will see all of you on the other side.